What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and I hope you're all doing well today. Now, I mentioned about a week or so ago that I'd be doing a tips and tricks sort of guide video for Assassination, and now that I've done a couple re-clears of Castle Nathria with it, I figured this was a good time to put it together. So basically, this video will just be a series of tips, tricks, pointers, and recommendations that I've come up with and have tested, and they seem to help me understand the intricacies behind Assassination the most, so I figured I'd share them with you too. So thank you so much for joining me today. Now let's go over some tips, tricks, and pointers for Assassination. As always, this video will be segmented out so you can jump to whatever section you're interested in. If you have any further questions, feel free to comment on this video or stop by my community Discord to ask. The link for that will be in the description of this video. Also a quick hello and thank you so much to the newest patron of the channel, Zaire. I sincerely and truly appreciate your support, my friend, and I'll do my best to keep improving the channel and community to the best of my ability. So Assassination has been on a bit of a roller coaster ride since the end of Battle for Azeroth. Having gone from a pretty high-performing spec down to basically non-existence for a little while, it is now seeing a major resurgence in power and popularity among the rogue community. Being a DPS specialization that revolves around damage over time effects, it has a couple intricacies that the other two specializations of rogues don't have, which I'll try to explain and elaborate on throughout this video. I will be looking at all this strictly from a rating standpoint, though I might do a Mythic Plus tips and trick thing sometime in the future. First and foremost is something you'll really need to be aware of when playing Assassination, and that is to always be aware of the timings of your bleeds and Shiv windows. Garrote and Rupture ideally should not be refreshed during the 9-second window of Shiv. This kinda ties in with making sure you're taking advantage of the pandemic refresh system as much as you can, since this will give you a lot more wiggle room in your rotation to line things up better. If you aren't aware of the pandemic refresh mechanic, then I highly recommend checking out this video I did just a few days ago explaining how it works. The short version is basically that you can carry over 30% of the duration of your Garrotes and Ruptures by refreshing them when they have at least 30% of their duration remaining. This does apply to a few other buffs and debuffs in the toolkit like Envenom and Slice and Dice, but it's really important to keep track of your timers on these two bleeds. Due to that, I recommend getting like a WeakAura or a nameplate system like KUI nameplates or Plater or something like that so you can keep track of these easier. Not only are they crucial to your energy regeneration through the Venomous Wounds passive, but they also contribute a sizable portion of your overall damage. This also means that if you absolutely have to, then you should refresh Rupture with less than full combo points if it means keeping the bleed active constantly. Though this does set you back a bit on efficiency and it results in playing a little bit of catch up to get your pandemic refreshes back up to the right amounts, but it's definitely worth it. This next one is kind of a multifaceted tip and ties in with the first one. You should basically never be holding Shiv for anything ever, so preemptively refresh your bleed so that you can work on getting as many high combo point Envenoms into your Shiv window as possible. This means ideally having a lot of energy stocked up so you can dump combo points and finishers in this 9-second window of opportunity. It's recommended to have somewhere in the range of like 80 to 90 energy for your Shiv window. There are some instances where you might want to hold on to your Shiv for just a little bit, and that's, for example, like if your Vendetta is about to come off cooldown within the next 12 or so seconds. Outside of that, you need to be trying to get as many effective Shivs into your fight time as possible. Third, always try to keep your Garrotes and Ruptures active on multiple targets, or as many as you can feasibly get to. Kind of an obvious pointer, but not only does this give you more damage on multiple targets, but it further increases your energy regeneration through the Venomous Wounds passive. You also need to make sure all your bleeding targets have deadly poison ticking on them, otherwise you won't get any energy at all from those Garrote and Rupture ticks. In situations where you're up against 3 or more targets, you can use Fan of Knives to quickly reapply your poisons to your secondary and tertiary targets, which will save you a lot of auto attack damage that you'd be missing out on from tabbing between multiple enemies. And as a quick mention, since we're talking about multiple targets, once you reach 4 or more targets, you'll want to use Fan of Knives as your combo point generator. Another big thing that you really want to remember, unless you're running the Blindside talent and you get a free ambush proc, you should basically never be using regular ambush. Now I hear this come up as a question a lot, because ambush does like double the damage of mutilate for the same energy cost, so why would you not want that? There are a couple factors that go into this. Possibly the biggest one is that mutilate is 2 hits even though it's considered 1 attack. This means that mutilate has 2 chances to give you an extra combo point from critically hitting via the Seal Fate passive. This alone is a pretty big increase in the amount of combo points you'll be able to earn and spend throughout a fight, but there's also the fact that you will have 2 chances per mutilate to hit an enemy with your poisons. So while the damage on paper might not be as high, there are a number of benefits to mutilate over ambush. And especially now with the Doomblade legendary being so popular, there is even more reason to prefer mutilate over ambush, again, unless it's a freebie that procs from your Blindside talent. And while this isn't a super critical tip or trick, I know someone will ask for an opening cast sequence, so I'll go over that as well. For our vampire boys and girls of the Venthyr Covenant, this should be what your flagellation opening sequence should look like. This will of course depend on your talents, but with Master Assassin being the current go-to choice for raiding, I will be explaining this opener under the pretense that you're running that. Naturally, we'll be starting from stealth and with deadly poison active. You'll start with a mutilate, spending any combo points you can earn from that on a slice and dice immediately. You'll then cast mutilate, garrote, and then the flagellation ability. You'll then drop any combo points you currently have on your first rupture, moving into a vendetta, shiv, and then vanish. And as a reminder, vendetta and vanish are not on the GCD. If you have an on-use stat trinket, this is where you'll want to activate it as well with vendetta, ideally lining them up whenever possible. And as a quick mention for flagellation and vendetta, you technically can hold flagellation to line it up with vendetta every time if you really want to, but if it causes you to miss a flagellation during the fight, then it's not worth it. So if you know that you're not going to get another flagellation in anyhow, then yes, you can line them up, but that does require knowing the timing of the fights really well, so if you do, then you're good to go. Anyways, now that you're in your Vanish and Shiv window, you'll be going back into your Mutilates and Envenoms back to back, hopefully generating lots of extra combo points with that Master Assassin buff active. You'll also want to keep an eye on your Rupture and Garrote timer so that way you know to refresh them so you can get the most Pandemic refresh out of them as possible. For Non-Venthyr, the opening sequence is nearly identical. We'll start with a Mutilate from Stealth and cast Slice and Dice immediately again. Then another Mutilate, a Garrote, and a Rupture. After the Rupture, we'll use our Covenant ability, whether it's an Echoing Reprimand, Sepsis, or a Serrated Bone Spike. Then Vendetta, Shiv, and Vanish before we get back into the Master Assassin Shiv bonus damage window with our Mutilates and Envenoms and keep an eye on those bleeds again. This next part is not necessarily an Assassination specific tip, but if you choose to run the Inscrutable Quantum Device trinket, then I highly recommend having a WeakAuras that shows exactly what it's going to proc. I've been dabbling with a couple to see which ones work best, and I found that this one seems pretty solid and is quite popular, so I'll leave a link to it down in the pinned comment below. While there are other much more predictable and strong trinkets, the Quantum Device can theoretically be a very solid choice for Assassination, but always sim your own trinket options and choose what works best for you as well. In the beginning of a fight, it will virtually always give you the stat buff, as long as someone doesn't get punched in the teeth by the boss on a pole, in which case it might heal you or whatever dingus did that. And as a side note, that has totally never happened to me before, but always make sure you're using Tricks of the Trade on pull, just in case. For your raiding legendaries, Doomblade is pretty much the ultra popular choice right now due to its exceptional overall damage and ease of play. However, and this is something that will really depend on your group's progression and the particular fight, it might not be a bad idea to wear the Zul'jik Insignia legendary on some encounters. While it might sim a couple percent lower in overall damage, if you're on a fight where critical damage is right near the end, such as Sledgefist with his Enrage, or Sired Athreus with his very crucial Phase 3 that gets very hectic, the damage you're dealing will mean much more in those situations than bolstering your overall damage. Again, this is really dependent on your group, and if you're progressing on bosses and just need to squeeze out a bit more damage at the right time or not, but always be mindful of your options. A lot of people tend to just fixate on parsing really well in a fight, but looking at it from a group dynamic instead, you might see that that's not always the best option. Just something to think about. Well folks, I hope some of this information helps you perform a little bit better as Assassination in Raid, and I'm not gonna lie, that damage is really impressive once you get the hang of it. Already there's fights where I have almost 1,000 higher DPS overall than I do in Outlaw, and that's at the exact same item level, which is pretty crazy. So I hope this information proves useful to you. If so, then please consider leaving a like, a comment, or maybe even subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet. It's all tremendously appreciated and helps a lot with the channel's growth. And as always, my gratitude to you, my viewers, commenters, subscribers, and especially my patrons, who all help make these Shiba Shenanigans possible. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.